Okay, today we are going to see our first AWS service, that is IAM, that is Identity Access Management. Okay, so what is IAM? So Identity Access Management is the user management and the roles and the groups of the users, okay, who are being using this AWS Management Console. So yesterday we have created a free tier account, okay, which is a management console to manage all the services of your AWS account. So if you want to give an access to that management console or the services of this AWS account which you have created, if you want to give a particular roles or particular groups to this users, and if you want to give the permissions to the particular user, so if you want to restrict the services. So if you want to give a particular services to a particular person, and if you want to give some set of services related permissions to other set of persons, so we can do with IAM. Okay, so we'll see what is that. So for example, here we have took some employees. Okay, so here we have Alice, Bob, and Charles. Consider, let us say, like these three employees, they are belong to this developers group. Okay, and we have other two employees, David and Edward. Say like they are belongs to this operations group. Okay, so and we have Charles and David who are belongs to this audit team. And we have one employee, Fred. He is not belongs to any group, but he is a independent, so he's not belonging to any group. So he is a employee, but he is not belongs to any group. Say like this particular six users, so they have different roles and different assigned to different groups. So what I can do is, so I can group these employees to a particular group, and I can name that group, and I can give a set of policies. So policies is nothing but, so which service is like which service we want to enable it for the particular users, and which service we want to restrict for particular type of users. So a policy defines which set of services are being authorized or being uh, used by the particular people or particular users in IAM. Okay, so a particular person is nothing but a particular IAM account in AWS. Okay, a person can be assigned to multiple number of groups, and for each group we can assign a policy. Okay, a policy is a set of rules or set of restrictions which allows the access to the service or which denies the access to the service. Okay, so we'll see how this policy is. So policy consists of this type of JSON. Okay, so we have already seen in our area classes like what is JSON and how it works. Okay, so a policy JSON consists of a particular set of rules and a particular set of statements. So if you can see on the right side image, so here we have a version details. So a particular policy have a version. So we can give the version number here, and each policy have an ID. So here I am saying that S3 account permission. So we'll see what is S3 in our coming classes. So for now, like consider like S3 is one of the services in AWS. So the ID of this particular policy is, okay, S3 account permissions, and here we'll write the statement here. So here we can write statements, multiple statements. So the statements is an array. You can write multiple statements for this particular policy. Here we will give the statement ID, okay, and the effect. So this effect is something which says like how to, is like it is this uh, particular policy is either allowing or denying any particular services in AWS. Okay, so here we'll write a principal. In the principal we have this AWS tag. So here we see this ARN. In the complete AWS environment, you will see this ARN ID for every service and every user. So here what it will do is, it is a particular, okay, and a unique address for each service or each user in AWS. So we'll break this out. See, this is ARN. ARN is the format like which, if we start with ARN, it is saying that okay, this is identifying a particular service or a particular user or a particular service related module in AWS. So ARN AWS IAM is the service which we are using now. So this is the service name. Here we'll get the service names. If you are going with other service ARN, here the service name will change. And this is our account ID. So we'll see what is an account ID. Okay, and after this, this is the username root. So here what we are saying is, so in AWS IAM, we have a user called root, okay, in this particular account. Okay, so I want to allow, okay, this particular action to this particular user for this particular resource. Okay, so this principal is something which defines the address of the user here. This action is something which gives us the policies. That means it is saying S3 get object. It is one type of permissions, and S3 put object. This is another permissions. Get object is something which allows you to put your flat files in S3 bucket. So we'll see what is this S3. For now, just understand like S3 is a AWS service where we store all my flat files. Okay, so in S3, I have permissions. We are allowing the permission to get the objects. That means to read the objects from S3. And in same S3, we are allowing to put the objects. That means upload the images or upload the files to S3. So we are allowing these actions, this particular user, and this resource is something which is inside this service. Okay, so in S3 we'll store all our files in some buckets. Okay, so buckets is something like a folder. Okay, so we are allowing this particular user with this particular policies only for this resource. So here also we are giving a ARN. As I said, this ARN is something which is a address type of thing in AWS service. So here ARN AWS S3. So here it is pointing the S3 service. In this S3 service, it is saying that my bucket slash star. That means all these elements in this my bucket. Okay, in S3, we are allowing the access to this particular root user to get and put the objects. Okay, so this is something like which will be auto generated if you create a policy. We have two types of methods to create a policy. One, we can write this type of JSON, or else we have a individual user interface or like user interface to create all these policies. Okay, so you just need to understand when whether if you are doing it with the UI or user interface, in the backend it will create a policies like this. Okay, so the main thing is like in exam questions what you will get is like they will give some questions like which of this tag is belongs to IAM policies. So they will give options like version, statements, effects, actions, and resource. So which one of this belongs to IAM policy? So you need to pick the tags which is in the IAM policies. So you need to keep in mind like what is the different tags and what is the different values that are being used in the IAM policies. Okay, so we'll see what are users, what are groups, and what are policies in our AWS account. Okay, so I have created my AWS Freeter account. I am opening this. Okay, here this is my AWS Freeter account. So I have created it. Here we'll go to the search bar and we'll search for IAM. So here we'll get IAM, and I'm opening this IAM here. So now I am in my root user account. Okay, so this is my root user account. So I'll log in it again. So how we log in into my Freeter account is I'll go to aws.amazon.com/console. So here I'll click on sign into my console. Okay, so here we have two type of logins here. One is the root user, and other is IAM user. So now I am going. So now I'm going with this root user. So we'll create an IAM user using this root user. So I'll give my email and a login. Any doubts? Okay. So I log in into this particular account as a root user. Okay. So here you see this is my root user. Okay, and this is our account ID. Here we can see our account ID. So each AWS account has an unique account ID. Okay. So now I am going to IAM. Okay. Here we have all our options here. So first thing we will go with is we'll go with uh, users. Okay. So IAM, as I said earlier, so it allows us to create a user. User is something like one of the physical person. So for each company in your organization, you can create a user. Okay. So like I have a team of 15 members who are being working with me. Okay, in AWS, and I am the main manager for them. So what I'll do is I'll create their users and I'll assign them the specific roles or the specific permissions which they want. So in these 10 members, in these 15 members, like 5 members may be working on the EC2 service, and 5 members working on S3 service, and 5 other members are using some other services. So what I'll do is I'll create 3 groups. In that case, I'll create 3 groups and assign those people to each group, okay, their respective group, and I'll add their permissions to that particular group. Okay. So here what I'll do is first I'll create a user. To create that, we'll click on this. In the users, we'll click on add users. So I'll give the username as Charles. Uh, so here, like we'll go accordingly with this particular PPT, this structure. So we have Alice and Bob and Charlie. So first we'll create Alice user. So we won't be creating all the users. Like I'll explain how to do it with a single user. So here we have an option C, provide user access to the management console. So in AWS we have 2 type of users. So one user is something who can use the permissions of the AWS service. That means he won't get the access to particular AWS console, but through command line or something he can access the particular AWS account. So we'll see what is the AWS CLI and all. So for now, just understand there are 2 type of users. Either we can give them access to this console, or we can give them access to particular services only using the AWS CLI. Okay. So for now, I am giving the access to this particular management console. So management console is something which we are using now. This particular account and this particular UI account which we are logging in is called AWS Management Console. So here there are 2 options, right? Specify a user in Identity Center. This is the recommendation which is given by AWS. For now, I want to go with AWS IAM because like we are working on IAM user. So I will create an IAM user first. So don't worry about this. This is not that much. So for now, you need to understand like how to create a IAM user. So I will create an IAM user here. So after selecting this, see here, it will give 2 options. Either it will auto generate a password, or it will give a, or you want to enter a custom password. So I will enter a custom password. Okay. So we can also change this particular, okay, password complexities. Okay. So that is also available in AWS. If you go here, uh, okay, first we'll complete this. Okay. Here I am giving a password here. So here I am creating a user with name Alice. Okay. So I am creating him as an IAM user. I am giving a management access. Okay, access to management console here. I give a password. So here we have also an option like user must create a new password in the next sign in. So as I am a root user, I am creating this username for some other person. So I am creating a password here and I know the password. So if I want him to change the password in his first login, so I will enable this. So what happens is if I enable this, when the person first logins to his account with the username and password which you have given, okay, the AWS will prompt him to change his password. Okay, change his new password. Okay, so I am not selecting this now. Okay, and click next. So here we'll give the permissions to this particular user. So from the first step, we are creating the user. So here we have permissions options. After creating this user, we need to create some or we need to assign some permissions to this particular person. Okay, these permissions can be given in three types. One is we can add a group and we can add a set of permissions to that group and we can add this user to this particular group so that all these permissions which is assigned in this group, okay, will be given to these users in the group. Other thing is if we have any other users, okay, with the same permissions, we can copy the permissions from that user. Other thing is we can attach a policy directly. That means we can give a simple single policies. So here we have already seen what is policy in the previous slide, right? So these are the policies. If you want to see this, if you click this policy, so all these policies are something like a set of rules for this particular so service. So here I have administrator access service. So let's open this and see what is this. So in this policies, you can go directly like this. If you want to see the policies, you can click on the policies. These policies, see here. So if you see here, there are 377 services and we are allowing 377 services out of 377 services for this particular policy. That means this administrator access is having all the access to 377 services that is being provided by the AWS, and the access is also full level. So this is a admin permissions. If you give this admin permissions to a particular person, so you will get access to all the services and all the options in the AWS. Okay, so if we go to this policy versions, so here we can see another ARN. So this other ARN is, so this ARN is for Amazon AWS IAM related service, and this is a policy, and the policy name is administrative access. Okay, so here you can see all these permissions which are being allowed for this particular administrative access policy. So here if we click on this JSON, so we'll get this particular JSON. Okay, so this is something like which we have seen in the earlier slide. So here we have a version for this, and here we are writing a statement. In this statement we are writing the effect as allow. That means we are allowing the action is star. That means for all services, okay, all actions. That means star means all, and the resources are all. Star means all. So what we are doing, we are allowing, okay, all the actions on all the resource for this particular policy. Okay, so if we go to some other policies like S3, so we have another policy called S3 read-only access policy. We'll see how it is. So here we have out of 377 services, it is allowing only two services, okay, in this for this particular policy. So those two are S3 limited read access and S3 object lambda read and write access. So if you click on this particular JSON, here you can see it is allowing for the action is S3 get and S3 list. So this means it will allow us to read the list of objects which is in the S3 and S3 objects lambda. So these are some set of actions and we are allowing this particular on all resource. Okay, So this resource star means only the resource which is being available in this particular services. All the resources which are available in this particular services, we are allowing the user to access them. So this is for Amazon S3 related access. So here, like this, we can create or we can use this. All these are like predefined policies. So if you want to create a new policy also, you can do this. So here you can create a new policy. Okay. So here we need to select for which AWS service we are creating this policy. So I'll select IAM. So for this IAM role, here I'll give. So what is access level? So what the services we need to create this policy. In this policy, what are the services we need to give actions or we need to allow this. We can create this here. Okay. So once we create it, so here we can create the we'll get the JSON for them. Okay. So here we can write our own policy and we can save them. Okay. So this is like creating these policies and all. It will go into this particular AWS provisional level. For this associate level, you need to understand what is this version statement and what is this effect. And you need to understand you can create a new policy of your own and you can add it to your IAM user. Okay. So I'm not creating anything here. So we are using this only policies which are already being created in the AWS. So there are like 377 for now, like it may increase in the future. Okay. So coming back to so you understood what are the policies, right? So a policy is a set of rules for a particular set of services in AWS. So either we can allow or deny the services, the access to the services, and we can create a policy. Okay. So coming to here what we are doing is we are creating a group here. So we'll add the users to a group. So if you want to add the group, first we need to create a user group, right? So here we can create a group by clicking this button. So if I create a group, I'm creating a group like admin. I'm giving all the administrative access to this admin group. See here. So I have a policy name called admin access. Okay. And I'm creating a group with name admin. So I'll create user group. I'll click this. So now I have a group which is called admin group and it has all the administrative access. Okay. And if I click on next, so it will give us a summary here. So here the username which we have given is Alice. We have given a custom password for him. So there is no need to password reset for the first login. And coming to the permission, we have created a group. And for this admin group, we have given a administrative access permission and we are adding this particular user to this group. That means this Alice will also get the admin access as he is being joined in this admin group. So this tags is something which you can enter for your understanding. For example, if I want to add a description here for this particular service or this particular user, so I can add this particular key description as key and value as if you can add some description. So this is a admin user. Okay, so mostly we won't be using this. So this is just to add tags for your particular service or something. Okay. So here, after completing this, we'll just click on create user. So now, so the user is created. So I can go to this particular URL to log in. Okay. So this particular URL, how to log in? So for if you want to log in as a root user, we are using console dot. Okay. Uh, so what I'll do is I'll open another browser here. So here we are using Chrome. Okay, so I'm opening another browser here. Okay, so here I'll use, I'll keep them side by side. In one browser I am logging as a, so in the browser in the left side I am already logged in as a root user. Okay, so in this right side browser, so I'll try to log in as a IAM user. So what I'll do is I'll copy this URL and I'll paste it here. So this URL, if you can see, it is starting with the account ID. So this is the account ID of our, okay, AWS account. So in this account ID, it is saying sign in. So that means, so when you give this particular URL, so it is already redirected to your account and it is asking for your account IAM username and password. Okay. So other thing what we'll do is we'll go to this account settings. Settings. IAM. So here you can see in the dashboard. So in the IAM dashboard, we have something like it is showing my account ID. Okay, and here, and this is called something like account alias. So every time if I want to give my users or the users who are using my particular AWS console, okay, if I want them access, so I don't want to give this URL, so it is containing some account ID number and it is hard to remember, right? So that what I can do is I can create an alias here, alias name for my AWS console. So here what I'll do is I'll create something like Raju Link, and see here now my URLs will become something like this. Okay, instead of account ID I can give an alias here, and if I click on save changes, okay, now I got some my URL like this. So instead of using this, so it will also work. Okay, instead of using like this, I am giving https Raju Link and this URL. So it is also bringing me to the same, okay, account. So but only thing is it is redirecting with an alias. Okay, now we'll log in with the user which we have created. So we have created IAM user. So if you want to if you want to log in as a root user, you can switch to root user here. Okay, so now as we are logging with an IAM user account, so I log in with this user account. So I forgot the password. Oh my God. Okay, so now I am logging in as a user. So here you can see the difference here. So I am putting this side by side. Here, like I am being logging in as a root user here. So that's why I'm getting the root username here. So here see, so here I am logging in as a alias user, IAM user. So that's why I'm getting the alias name which is related to or which is linked to this particular Raju Link, this particular account. So here we can see how if you are logged in with a IAM account or a root user account, we can identify using this. Okay, so now we'll go to IAM again here. So as we have given all these services, like we have given the administrator role and we have assigned all the permissions for this particular user, right? So what I will do is we'll see how it works. So I'm going to users here. Okay, so I have allies here, or I'm going to user groups here. We have created a admin group and we have added allies to this particular user. Okay, so now what we'll do is, so I'll remove this particular user from this allies, this admin group. So to that we can create it and we can click on this remove users. So I have removed this allies from this particular administrative user. So if I click on refresh here, so I have not given any permission. I have just created this user now and I have not given any permission. So if I refresh here, see, you can see, so the access denied. So it is saying that it has no permissions to list the users or use any service here. Okay, so here we can understand how strong the AWS IAM is. So it can give the access, okay, in a particular service level or something. Okay, so if I now what I will do is I'll create, okay, so I'll go to this user. So we have allies. Okay, so in the permissions level, so we click on add permission. Previously we have these three options, right? So we have added this person to this group. What now I'll do is, like, I'll directly attach a policy to him. So I will give something like IAM read-only access policy. So what this policy gives is, it gives or read-only access to this particular IAM service, okay, to this particular user. So now we are not giving the permissions to the group. We are directly giving the permissions to the, or we are directly giving the policies to the particular person or the particular user. Okay, so this particular policy will be assigned only to this particular user. Okay, so I'm clicking on next and I'm saying like add permission. Okay, so if I refresh here now, okay, I am read only access, right? Okay, see now, so now you're able to read the IAM. I'll remove this. Okay, see, now I'm able to read the services, okay, which is in the IAM. So see, but what happens is I have given only read only access. What I'll do, I'll try to create a group here, another group, some test group. And if I want to create a group here with some permissions, so if I want to create a group, it will say, see, the user group was not created because his LS is not authorized to perform IAM create group. Because why this is why, because we have only given read access to this particular user, okay, and we are not given any full access to create a user. So he is not able to create any users or roles or policies in this particular, okay, AWS account. Okay, he can only view. So this is how we can give the permissions to a particular set of persons. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll go to my user groups and again I'll add this particular user. Okay, I'll add this user too. So how we'll add this, we'll also see that. So if you want to add particular persons to the existing group, you, you can go to user groups. You can select that group. After selecting that group, so here we have an option called add users. After this, like, you will get the list of all the users. You can search them and you can select like multiple users, and you can add users. So that user will be added to my admin group. So now, so I have permissions. I have full access to, again, I have the full access to all the services in my AWS. Okay, so this is about this policies, users, and users groups. Okay, coming back to our session. So here we have seen how we create a different users. Okay, what is a policy and what the policy contains. and what is a group, and how we attach a policy to a group. Okay, and here we also seen how to attach a policy directly to a person. So we have added this IAM read-only access directly to this policy to this person directly. So either we can add a particular policy to a particular group or a particular policy to a single person, but we cannot add like two policies. We can add two policies to the particular group also. Okay, so this is how like a policies look like. So this is one of the important thing for the examinations. You need to just know what are these tags and what they will do. So what is the effect, what is the principle, what will give the actions, and what is the resource tag. Okay, just understand how it works, and no need to understand about all this, and you not to remember about all this. You just remember about these statements or these keys. So what are the keys that are present in the IAM policy structure? You need to remember that. Okay. So we have gone through the IAM users, groups, and policies hands-on. So the next thing is multi-factor authentication. So this multi-factor authentication is something which gives a another step of authentication. Uh, so along with your username, your for the and along with your password. So here when we are creating a user or creating a root user, what we are doing is we are defining a password to your account. So multi-factor authentication is something which allows you to give more like one more step of security to your account. So MFA gives is something which is a combination of your password and plus with the security device you own. So how this MFA works is, so if you enable an MFA to a particular user, that may be a root user or a IAM user. So what we want to do is, so we have option to enable MFA in the IAM user. So if you do that, what we'll do is, so along with the password which you have created with your account, so it will authorize one of the device which is with your which is with you. That means it will authorize a device like your mobile, or there are some other devices that will be showing in the next slide. We are going to see that. So it will also authorize the device. So if you have this both combination only, then only it will give a successful login to your AWS management console. Okay, so this is mainly used when your password is either hacked or something or stolen. Still, they don't have this device, so they will be unable to log in into your particular AWS account. Okay, so how this MFA works is, so either it works with MFA hardware devices, or it will it will allow this with this virtual MFA devices. Okay, so this virtual MFA devices like which AWS supports is, one is the Google Authenticator, and we have another app called Authy. Okay, so the thing is, in Google Authenticator, it is only available for phones, but this Amazon Authy is available for multiple devices. So my suggestion is, for now we won't do this because we need to understand what is this, but we won't be doing this because if we lost any of our mobile or something, you will be completely losing your AWS account. So there are a lot of cases where the people lost their AWS account by losing their devices. Okay, so say like you have authenticated your mobile phone and you have added it to your MFA. So if you lost your mobile or something, so you won't be able to get back your root user account. Okay, so this need to be very carefully done. Okay, so for the exam purpose, we are learning about this. So these MFA devices options can be of two types. One is of virtual type, and one is a universal second factor security key. So this is something like a USB pen drive. You can put it in your USB drive or something for your device, which you are where you are using your management console, and it will authenticate it. Okay, so mostly the people will using this mobile apps. So how this works is, so when you log in with username and password, if the multi-factor authentication is enabled for that account, it will redirect something like this screen. Okay, and you need to authenticate your mobile while registering this MFA. Okay, so whenever you log in into this your particular AWS console, if MFA is already enabled, what it will do is you need to open this particular app which you have already in the device which you have already registered, and there it will give you a code. Okay, so you need to enter that code here, and then only you will be able to log into your AWS account. So to do this, so I'll show you where we can do this. So if you go to here, I'm going to my root user again. So when you go to users and if you click on any username, so here see like it is saying enable without MFA. So if you click on this, it will ask to enable MFA. If you go here, it will ask us to add a device here. So mostly I'm adding a I'm adding something device like this. Here we can see what are the different types of authentication devices. So I'm selecting this mobile, and if I click next, so here it will give a QR code. If you scan this QR code, okay, it will give some 2 or 3 security codes in that mobile app screen. You need to enter those mobile apps, those particular codes in these 2 text boxes, and you click on add MFA. Then your device will be okay authenticated, and it will be added as a MFA enabled device for this particular user. Okay, so uh, okay, so we'll be adding an MFA device in the AWS console like that. Okay, so after this we have, so we are coming to this user access now. So we have seen we can create a user and we can log in this by with this particular username password created by this user, and we can log in into management console. So there are 3 types of accesses that AWS that particular user can connect to AWS. So those are, one thing is AWS management console. So that is which we have seen in our earlier class. So here we have created a user and we have logged into with this username password to this particular AWS management console. So this is one type of access. Okay. And the other thing is through AWS CLI. Okay. So what is this AWS CLI is? So through AWS command line, which is protected by the access keys, and the third thing is okay using SDKs. Okay, so we have already seen the first thing. So the second one, AWS command line interface. So this is something where we can connect to AWS okay services and AWS account with a command line. Okay, so for that we need to install the CLI. So in our previous classes, we see in the development related classes, we have seen Angular and Ionic or something. So they have their own CLI. So to use Angular, what we have done, so we install npm install @Angular /CLI, right? That CLI indicates command line interface. So using that CLI, what we have done, like we have interacted with Angular, and we have generated some components, we have generated some created a new project. Similarly, in the Ionic also we have done Ionic new Ionic start. So that is connecting to the particular Angular or Ionic framework, and it is getting some data and it is putting it in our system. Similarly, for AWS also there is a command line interface. Okay, we'll see how to do that also. Okay, so this is one way to connect to AWS using okay command line interface. And this command line interface, these are protected by the access keys. Okay, we'll see about this access keys and how we'll generate this access key and how we will use this access key to log in into CLI. We'll see that in our coming classes. Don't worry about that. And the third thing is through software development kit, that is SDK. So most of the softwares, okay, all the programming languages like Python, Node.js, Java. So there are some requirement for these applications to connect from the applications to this AWS account. So for example, if I want to upload my images or upload my flat files into AWS S3. So S3 is something which stores the flat files. Okay. So we'll go deep into that later. For now, understand like S3 is one of the service in AWS where we can store our flat files. Okay, so my requirement is I am creating an application in Node.js, and I want to upload my images to AWS S3 from my application. So here the application needs to contact or connect with the AWS, okay, console or AWS account. So for that we will use this software development kit. Okay, what this do is like it will create a connection between the application, okay, and the AWS console. Okay, so this SDKs are of SDKs will be available in for multiple programming language, because this in the market these applications are being built with different types of technologies, right? So only all the applications are not only built with .NET or not only built with Java. So based on the requirements, so different people uses different programming languages to create their applications. Okay, so for most of the like trending or the booming applications or the application technologies, so Amazon has release their SDK and they will be able to use it. Okay, so if you are a Node.js developer, you have a Node.js SDK for AWS and you can import that using npm install AWS SDK. Okay, so we have seen how to use npm packages, right? So if you are a Node.js developer, you'll just type npm install AWS SDK and you'll get a SDK package to your Node.js, and you can just import the okay AWS libraries and you can use them. So if you want to connect to AWS S3, if you want to see the list of all the users which are in the AWS IAM from your applications, you can do that using AWS SDK. So the thing is access keys. We have already seen these access keys. So for the command line CLI and the software development SDK, we are connecting to AWS account using these access keys. Okay, access keys are generated through the AWS console. So when we log into, we need to create them using this AWS console for one time. So we need to log in into AWS console and we need to create these access keys, and we'll use these access keys to connect through command line and SDKs. So users can manage their own access keys. That means if I am an IAM user, I can create my own access key and I will be able to create or log in into my CLI or SDK. That means it may have, so similarly like IAM accounts, so access keys also multiple and user specific. Okay. So, and access keys are secret, just like a password. So we don't need to share them with anyone. So it is similarly like your AWS console password. So we won't be using, we won't be sharing that password to anyone. So access key has two things, which is a access key ID and secret access key. Access key ID will be act as our username, and secret access key will act as a password. So we'll see how they look and how we'll use them. So for now, just understand. So we'll connect to CLI and SDK using these access keys. Access keys have username and password, and each access key can be each user can have like multiple access keys, and access keys are generated from the AWS console. Okay. Here, what is AWS CLI? So this CLI, it's a tool that enables you to interact with AWS services using commands in your command line shell. Okay, so if you are using any non-UI related particular operating system like Linux, so if you want to interact with AWS from the Linux, okay, or Unix, what you'll do, you'll install the AWS CLI in this particular operating system, and you can connect to AWS account from the uh, command line from that particular operating system. You can run your scripts and you can uh, write that particular AWS commands in your script and you can use them. Okay. In all this particular CLI is an open source. You can get it from GitHub also. So AWS CLI is an open source. So why this is an alternative to use instead of using this management console, we can also use this command line as an alternative. Okay, so here we can see in the image, so this is the sample commands which we trigger from the AWS CLI. So as it is an AWS SDK, it starts with AWS, and after that it is giving something like S3. S3 is a service, that means AWS S3 CP means copy. So here what happened is using this AWS S3 copy command, we are copying my file into our local file into AWS S3 bucket. Okay, so AWS S3 copy my file.txt. This is a file in my local system, and I'm copying it to S3 CCP my bucket. So its bucket is something like a folder in S3. So I'm copying my file to S3 bucket using AWS CLI. So if you hit enter, see here it is saying uploaded. Okay. Similarly, we can list that particular files in the bucket so that we can, for that we will use AWS S3 LS. LS is something which we use for list. Okay, here what it is doing, it is running a command to list all the elements which are in the S3 bucket. So here we have already uploaded a myfile.txt file in this bucket, and if you are listing it, so it is showing that particular file is uploaded. So this is the sample structure of using the command line of AWS. Mostly we won't be running any AWS CLI related thing, but we need to understand and we need to know that there is a CLI version for AWS also. Okay, so that's it for the, and here what is an SDK. So we have seen the command line interface, and we also see what is an SDK. Okay, SDK is a software development kit, and it is a language specific. So this language is programming language specific APIs. So you may use it SDK for your Node.js, for Java, for Ruby on Rails, for .NET, for Python. Okay, for every languages they have given this AWS. They have created this AWS SDK. Okay, this AWS SDK enables you to access and manage AWS services programmatically. So as I said, if I want to get the list of all the images or all the files in my S3 bucket, I can connect my application to my AWS, okay, S3 bucket using this AWS SDK, and I can get the list of all the files and I can show it in my application. Similarly, if I upload any file here, okay, and so that I can take that file and I can upload it to AWS S3 bucket using this SDK. Okay, so this SDK is embedded with your application, so we just need to import that library or SDK libraries and we can use this. This SDK supports this particular programming languages, so that is JavaScript, Python, PHP, .NET, Ruby, Java, Go, Node.js, and C++. Okay, for all these languages, AWS is providing the SDK so that they can integrate the AWS particular libraries in their, okay, uh, applications, and they can use them. And coming to other also, and then they are also providing the mobile SDK for Android and iOS also. AWS is providing SDK so that they can integrate the AWS SDK in their mobile apps also. Okay, and for the IoT devices also, it is providing IoT devices are something which is a combination of hardware and software, something like our GPS trackers or something. So those IoT devices also it is, okay, supporting its SDK. Okay, so we'll see how to install the AWS CLI. Okay, we'll do one thing. Still now, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. So this is a installation of CLI, and other things are a bit large topic, so we'll do it tomorrow. So till now, if you have any doubts in this particular IAM or thing or anything, you can ask me. Any doubts so far? Or else I will go quickly with this AWS installation if there is no doubts. Okay, so what is how to install this AWS CLI? So the, here we can go to Google here. If you type AWS CLI installation in Windows, so in the first link you will get the documentation like how to install this. It is a straightforward installation. There is no complexity in this. So here it will give which operating system you are being using. Okay. So if you are using Windows, you can go straight and you can download this MSI and you can install this. So don't do this all this. So after installation, just open a command prompt and just type this AWS hyphen version. So if you can see this output, so that means AWS CLI is okay installed in your particular local system, and you can be able to connect it to AWS CLI using your command terminal using AWS CLI. Okay, so for now I am using Mac. You can download this and you can install it, and you can just type AWS version. Meanwhile, I am using Mac OS, so I'll go here. And so for Mac, they are giving a package file instead of MSU file. So I'm downloading this. Okay. So installation will be almost same in Mac and Windows. So I open this. So I got this. I'll click continue. Continue. I'll give some license. I'll agree the license agreement. So it is showing like where it will install. I'll say install, and it asks for the password. Okay. So it is installing in my local system. Okay. This was installed, and I'm closing this. So now I have installed this. So what I'll do is I'll go to my, I'll open a terminal here. So this for terminal is something like a command prompt in your Windows system. So you can open your command prompt in your Windows system. And if I type AWS hyphen version, okay. So AWS hyphen version. Hope I think you can see this. See here. So I got this thing AWS CLI. So and it's the version name, and it is using Python 3.3, and we got something here. So if you get some output like this, so that means AWS CLI is installed in your local PC. Okay, so just go to this documentation. It is straightforward. So you can go to, if you are using Windows, you can go to here and you can download this and install, and open your command prompt and run AWS hyphen version. So this will give this particular output here. So that means AWS CLI is installed in your local system. So now what I'll do is we have installed this AWS CLI, but we need to connect this AWS CLI to my particular, okay, this particular account, right? So then only I can use all the services in this account using CLI. Okay. So for that, what we'll do is we'll go to the terminal again. So here, I'll try to increase the font size. You can see it now. Okay, is this okay? So what I'll do is, so now to to start using the CLI, and you need to connect to this particular AWS account. What we'll do is we'll start doing AWS configure. So we'll type AWS configure. So it is asking for AWS access key ID. So first we'll create this access key ID in our management console. Okay, and we'll use this again here. So I'm coming to my root account, or I'll go to my, we can create access keys to for the particular IAM users also, as we have seen. So I'm going to my, so this is my allies user, right? So I'll go to this particular users here. So here I have allies. So when I go to this particular user details, here we see security credentials. Okay. So if you click on the security credentials, and you can see here the access keys. Okay, here when I click on create an access key, it will give us some set of options. So here I'm using it for command line. So it will show us some recommendations like use Cloud Shell. Okay, instead of using this command line, use Cloud Shell and all. And it's asking us to use AWS CLI v2. So as we are now learning about how to use CLI, we'll go with this and we'll see what is this Cloud Shell in the coming classes. So for now, I'm creating a AWS access key for this particular allies user. Okay, for the command line interface, and I click on next. So it is asking us to create a tag. So I'm giving it for uh, my allies CLI. Okay, so I'm creating an access key here. See, so here we have got an access key and a secret access key. So the best thing is you should download this file, because only here you can see, you can get a download option. So after going from this page, you won't see, okay, this particular access key. Okay, so you cannot see this access key again. Okay, so here only you need to download this CSV file and keep it safe. Okay, so here we have this access key and, okay, this key ID. Okay, now I'll say done. So now if I go here, see here I have an access key created here with this access key ID, and this is the description, what is the name of this, and it is the status, it is still active. So here, if you don't download that particular access key, so here we won't get any other activation, any other thing, or here we cannot see the password again. Okay, so be careful. So so don't forget to download the CSV file where we get this particular. Okay, so here we'll get this ID and we'll open this. See this one. So we'll get something like this. Okay, so we'll get the access key and secret access key here. This is our username and this is our password for CLI. So what I'll do is I'll copy this here. I'll go to my terminal. Here it is asking me for the AWS access key. I'll give it my access key. Then it is asking for my secret access key. I'll go here. I'll copy this and I'll give the secret access key here. And now it is asking for my default region. So what is the default region that this CLI you want to access? So as here we can see the CLI names here. So the IAM is a global thing here. So we won't be able to select it, but we can see the region names here. So we are using AWS Mumbai. So for this, the region name is AP South 1. So I'll go to this, I'll copy this and I'll give this. So my default region name is AP South 1, and it is asking for the default output format. So we can give it as a JSON, or we can simply ignore it and we can click and enter. So now, so my AWS configuration is done. So my AWS CLI is now configured with this particular account. Okay, using this access keys. Okay, so now what I will do is I will to connect to my particular AWS account. Okay, and I will try to use the services. So I clear this. Okay, and now what I'll do is I'll use AWS. Okay, and now I'm using IAM. I want to get the list of all the users which are in the IAM. So I am using IAM service. I'm saying list users. So what it will do is, so see, now it connected to my AWS, and here it got the user details from the IAM. Okay, see there is a user IIS, LIS, and it is the user ID and the ARN of the user ID. ARN is, as we said, it is a particular, okay, address for each service and each user in the AWS. So this belongs to AWS IAM service, and this is the account ID for this particular account of AWS. Okay, in this IAM service, here we are getting the user details of allies, and we are get the created date and the password, last password used date. Okay, so now what I'll do is, to understand this, now I'll go to my user groups. Okay, and again I will, this is my root user, you can see. So what I'll do is I'll go to my admin group and I'll remove the allies from this. Okay, I removed this user here. So now what I'll do is, again I'll run the same command, list user. So if you can see, so we have removed this particular users allies from this group. Okay, still he have IAM read-only access here. So we have already added this policy also. What I'll do is I'll remove these permissions also. So now the user has no other permissions. Okay, so this user allies has no permissions here. So what I'll do is I'll try to run this command again. See, now we are getting an error. So it is saying that he is not authorized to get the user list. Okay, so what are the permissions you are giving for this particular user that will be affected for this particular access keys also, because these security credentials are specifically, okay, binded to this particular alias user. So whatever, okay, permissions we are giving for this alias user, those permissions only will be accessible with this access keys. Okay, so if you change any permissions or if you add any permissions to this particular user, that will affect the access keys permissions also. Okay, so this access keys is something like a username and password for this user for the command line. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll go to groups again and I'll alias to this group again. So I'm adding user, I'll add this alias to this particular group, admin group, and now I can, now I will be able to, so it will take a little bit time, not much. Okay, so this admin group, now we have allies here. So see, now we got the permissions again and we'll be able to list all the, okay, users in the IAM. Okay, so that is about the CLI. So we understood how to install the CLI. So you can go straight forward like this and you can install this here, and after that you will type this command AWS version. So that will give you this output which indicates that AWS CLI is completely installed successfully in your local machine. And then you'll go to this IAM console and you'll go to users, and in this users part you'll go to security credentials and you'll create a security credential for this access keys, and you'll download that access key, and using that access key we go to AWS CLI and we'll type AWS. So if you want to change this particular access, you can again you can give a new access keys also. So already I'm using this access key, and that means I'm using this account. If I want to switch this account, again I can go to AWS configure and I can give my new user access key and password, and I can connect to that particular, okay, account using the particular access keys of that account. Okay, so you will give the AWS configure and you will fill this, and after that you will be able to do AWS ls AWS if I want to keep the ls. So this will list if there is any buckets in the particular S3, so it will give the list of this. Okay, so that is about the AWS CLI. Coming back to here, so what are roles? Okay, so there is a other concept in IAM called roles. So roles are like AWS services. Uh, so some AWS services will need to perform actions on your behalf. That means, so for example, I have a EC2 instance, which is a virtual server. Okay, we'll learn about what is EC2 and what is virtual server. So for now, just understand this is a virtual service in my AWS. So what I'm doing is I want to access to IAM roles, okay, or I want to access to particular other services in AWS from this EC2 instance. That means I want to connect to other services like S3 or something from this EC2 instance in AWS. So what I will do is, if I want to connect, okay, from this EC2 instance service to other service, okay, I need to define a particular role for this particular service. Okay, and then only I will be able to connect to other services in AWS from this particular service. So this is something like roles is something like a which are used to give permissions to the services internally in the AWS. Okay, so we'll see this hands-on, and we even be understanding it. So how we'll create a roles and all. So here, commonly the roles will be created to EC2 instance roles and Lambda functions and load for cloud formation. So this EC2 Lambda and cloud formations are AWS services. So these services wants to connect to other services, okay, to get access or to get some data from them or something. Okay, these particular services need to connect to other services. Okay, so to give that access of that connection, we are using these roles. Okay, roles have nothing to do with this users. Okay, they are specific to AWS services. Okay, if you are giving a permissions to a particular user in AWS, those are called policies. Okay, if you are giving any permission for the particular services in in AWS to access other services. So those are called roles. Okay. So for now, we'll create a sample role and we'll see how it works in the later stages. For now, we'll see how to create a role. So we'll go to roles here. So we'll click on create a role. So here we have roles for all these type of services. Okay, so we can create a role to access the AWS services. We can create a role to okay uh, access this AWS account related information, web identity, okay, and all this. But for now, for associate level and certification level, so we'll be only going with this AWS services. Okay, so now I'm creating a role, okay, which is used to okay authorize in some services which are in the AWS. Okay, so most commonly used okay roles are for AWS EC2 and Lambda. So first they are giving this, or else if you want to choose any other services, you can get it from the list. Okay, so we are creating a role so which is using for this EC2 instance. Okay, this means for all the for the services of all the instances or all the servers in EC2 will be accessible, okay, to use this AWS services which we are processing now. Okay, so here I have selected EC2 and here I have selected AWS services. Okay, and if I click on next, so now we need to okay select so what are the services in AWS that the EC2 service want to use. So what I'm saying is I want to use S3 read. So I want to give my EC2 service to give a permission to my EC2 service to read all the elements or all the list of buckets or all the list of files in the AWS S3 or something like I want to give an access to all the users list which is in the IAM. Okay, I want to give access to EC2 service to list all the users in my IAM okay account. So that means now my EC2 service will be able to okay connect to IAM service and it can get all the list of users. So this is the format of how a okay a role can be created. So it is creating a role and it is creating a permissions here. So here also we'll get the same policy related things. So here we can see. So the effect is allowing. The action is uh, this some role, and this here we are giving it for the service Amazon EC2. So for the EC2 service, we are giving this role to allow all the IAM related access for the EC2. Okay. So just try to understand it. We are not creating it. If we want to create, we can create it. We can create EC2 IAM role, read access role. Okay. So you can click on create. So this particular role has permissions to get S3 read-only access and IAM read-only access. We are adding these two policies, okay, these two permissions to particular EC2 service, and we are creating a role. So we are giving it EC2 IAM S3 read-only access role. Okay, so we are creating this role here. So here see we got EC2 IAM role here, which is used by the S3. So now my EC2 instance, my EC2 service, okay, will be able to like my all the virtual servers which I create in EC2 will be able to connect it to IAM S3 service, okay, and they are able to get the list of buckets in the S3 and list of users in IAM, okay. So that's how we use the roles here. So we'll see about what is EC2 and what is S3 in the coming classes. For now, just understand EC2 and S3 are the some services similar to IAM, right? IAM is something which used for the user management. Similarly, S3 and EC2 have their own, okay, roles in the AWS services. Okay, so now my EC2 service will be able to list or read all the items in S3 and IAM. Okay, so after this, we'll see. So we'll conclude this IAM part now. Okay, so what are the best practices and guidelines while using IAM? So the first thing is do not use the root account except for the AWS account setup. So we are using this root account, right? So we need to use this root account only to create these users. Okay, so other than that, we won't be using this root account much. Okay, for the security purpose. Only thing is we'll give if you want to create if you want to get access to all the services and you want to use the all services, what we will do is we create a admin user with administrative access, okay, where they will get all the access to all the 300 plus services in the AWS, and we'll use that user instead of using root user. Okay, and the second one is one physical user is called one AWS user. So if your organization is having 15 employees, so you need to create 15 different users for each person. That means if there is any access related, okay, things if you want to give to particular them, so you can simply manage them using their own, okay, user account. So don't so they must not share a single username and password or single user account across, okay, multiple persons. You can create, okay, any number of users. So you should create one particular AWS, okay, IAM account for each physical user. And next thing is assign users to groups and assign permissions to the group. So instead of directly giving these permissions or policies to a particular person, the best practice is to create some groups. So that may be admin group, a developer group, or a tester group, okay, or a DevOps group. You can create these particular groups and you can assign the users to the particular group, so that if you want to change any permissions to that particular group, so that will be applicable to all the users which are in this particular group. So you need to go to each user and change the permissions. If you change the group permissions, then all the permissions in that of the users in that group will be changed. So the best practice is to, instead of creating permissions to a individual person or individual user, so create groups and assign users to that groups and assign permissions to that groups, and create a strong password policy. This password policy is something which defines the structure of the password, saying like the password must contain uh, more than two numerics, a capital letter, and a special character, something. Okay, so you need to create a strong password policy. Use and enforce the users to use MFA. So it is like important to enable the MFA for all the users. Okay, so that will give an extra authentication or extra security for that particular user account. Okay, and the next thing is create and use roles for giving permissions to AWS services. Okay, so we have seen how we are using roles. So instead of giving all the access to all the services in AWS, you need to specify, okay, this particular set of permissions only need to be given to this particular server, particular service in AWS, and you need to minimize the permissions level. Okay, and next thing is use access keys for programmatical access. So we have already seen how to create an access key. So for programmatically creating or connecting to the AWS account through AWS CLI or SDK, we need to use access keys. audit permissions of your account using IAM credentials report and IAM access advisor. So we forgot to see this. We'll also see this now. So there is something like IAM credential report and access advisor. So I'll go to my here credentials report. So if I click this, so download credentials report. Okay, so I'll get a report like this in an Excel format. So we'll see this. So in this report, what we'll get is we'll get the list of all the users. Okay, so we'll get the list of all the users here. So we have two users now. One is root and other is allies. Okay, we'll get the errands of the root. So what is the time wait which we created the particular users? So is the password enabled or not? So one is the password last used, one is the password last changed. Okay, and we can see if the MFA enabled or not. If okay, are they using any access keys? If they're using access keys, when they have created it and when they have last used it. Okay, and what is the service which the access key have last used? Okay, we have listed the buckets in S3, right? So it is saying so the key which you this particular account, okay, LS has a access key, and that access key has used the S3 service the last. Okay, and it will give all the information about the user. So now only we have like two users. So if we have like 100 or something users, here you can trace out like who is being used in that particular services. Okay, and who is not changing their password, who is not getting logged into the account. You will get all the information here. So you need to keep a track on it so that if there is any inactive users, you either remove them or you can ask them to like log in and all. So here you will get the list of all the users report. Okay. Another thing is access analyzer. So this analyzer is something which analyzes all the users related analyzers. If I go here, credentials reports, and other thing is access advisor. So if I go here, IAM, futures. So don't worry about that. So here the last point is we need to audit the permissions of all the users in the IAM using IAM credentials report, and this advisory is also similar thing which is a graphical thing. So here we are getting IAM credentials report in an Excel format. Okay, so here these are the points which are like considered as the best practices, and you need to follow these guidelines while using IAM. So we'll quickly wrap up. So what is an IAM section we have done today? So we have created some users. So we learn how to create users and map this particular users to these groups. So how to create groups and what are the group contains the users. We see how to create user and how to add that particular user to the group, and we see what is a policy. We also see what is the JSON format of the policy and how to add a policies to either group or a individual user. We have seen what are roles and these roles, what for what these roles are used. We have created a role for the EC2 instance. Okay, and we have seen about the security, what is MFA and what is the password policy. Okay, and again we've seen what is AWS ALI. We've seen how to install this AWS ALI and how to connect it to AWS ALI. We have seen what is AWS SDK. So so we have learned what is AWS SDK. SDK is something which we use to connect to AWS services from our applications using the particular programming languages. So we saw how to create access key and how to use that access key to log in into AWS CLI. And we also see how to audit the users in the AWS IAM service. Okay, and we how to take the credentials report and how to check all the users related information in the particular audit thing. Okay, so that's it for today. So this is all about IAM. So I'll share this PPT with you. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me now, or else we'll close this session. So tomorrow we'll be seeing about mostly S3. Okay. So any doubts so far?